Hello and welcome back to X's and O's. As always, I am one of your co-hosts, Peter Borkowski, and I am joined by our other co-host, Mr. Bubba Hayes, back in the basement for this episode. Bubba, how are we doing this Tuesday night?
Doing pretty well. It's been a busy day on the golf course today, getting ready for a tournament this weekend. But yeah,
Hey,
back in the basement tonight.
yeah, some good weather for some golf. Except, well, later this week looks pretty shitty, but
We'll be
um,
down in Alabama, so not my problem.
not your problem. Yep. All righty. Well, March Madness has progressed since the last time we met up. Round s- Elite, let me see. Sweet 16 and Elite 8 have come and gone. We are down to our final four teams in the tournament. But before we get to all of that and look forward to championship weekend, which is this weekend, we're going to go over the Sweet 16 games, the Elite 8 games, and then, like I said, we'll give our predictions and talk about the remaining four teams and the possible championship game. So, Bubba, kind of like last week, I'm just going to go down whatever the bracket says, not necessarily chronological order, but we will hit every game. And we had some good ones this last weekend slash
Yeah.
Thursday. Had some stinkers too. So
hmm
a little bit of everything. But let's start off with the East region semifinal. Number one Duke taking on number five St. John's. Duke winning that one 80 to 75. Bubba, let's get while I pull up some stats to kind of look over. This is one of the games from the Sweet 16 I actually didn't watch.
hmm
Um, let's get your initial impressions on that one. Obviously, pretty high key matchup. Number one, Duke going up
Yeah.
against Slick Rick and St. John's after they are coming off their big win against Kansas in their last game. So let's get your initial impressions on that game.
Yeah. Honestly, one of the main games from that round that ended up being, a somewhat close game for most of the way. That was sort of a game where, if I'm remembering correctly, it was like several other games where the first half was very competitive, very close. I believe St. John's was actually winning for a decent amount of the first half, or at least, was pretty close the whole way. And then Duke kind of, pulled ahead there in the second half, played better. It ended up being a pretty close score. Duke did what they needed to do to win. They did a good job as far as, one thing I believe I mentioned last week was they were going to have to practice inbounding the ball a lot, and they were able to do that successfully. Maybe they should have remembered how to do that in their next game as well. But they were able to do that for the most part pretty well against St. John's, and they had a pretty balanced offensive game, and were able to kind of hold off the Johnnies there, and played much better in the second half for a somewhat convincing game. That was definitely their best game of the tournament, or not counting the first half against UConn, but we'll get to that later, obviously.
hmm Yep, you are correct. St. John's had a 1 point lead going into half, so kind of
hmm
a wash, but they were up, and then Duke outscored them by six in the second half. Um, Obviously, yeah, big performance out of Cam Boozer, 22 points. Caden kind of quiet that game, only seven, but we'll talk about them a little bit more in their next game because those two had quite a game against UConn for several reasons, but yeah, Cam Boozer kind of solidifying himself, which he already was, but as a top three pick in the NBA draft. Um, a lot of, I mean, we won't go too much into the draft because that's not the point of this, but a lot of different first overall picks I've seen lately since,
Yeah.
March has gone on. Earlier in
hmm
the year, it seemed like Peterson was kind of the given. But now you're seeing some, I correct me on his pronunciation, Dibasta, how do you say it? AJ?
Iabata?
Diabatsa, that's right.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of him. I've seen a couple boozers as well going number
Yeah.
one. So, um, as more of an NBA guy, I'm interested to see how that turns out. But yeah, I mean, good game, which is kind of what you hope out of, St. John's and Rick Pitino versus Duke. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think you could say a lot about what Pitino's done to St. John's.
Yeah.
Obviously comes with some baggage, but the results he's gotten over the last 2 years is pretty undeniable, even at his, let's say, advanced age.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
so. they're in a pretty good spot moving forward.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
because how deep do you remember how deep they went last season?
I want to say they made the round of 32 last year. I could be wrong, but I think they made the round of 32, and so that was kind of their goal this year was to make the second week,
Yeah, I
which
was
they
gonna
did.
say, yeah, they
Uh, yeah,
improved or at least equaled last year if they did go
yeah,
one further than you think. So yeah, I definitely got some momentum, just ran into what was one of the best teams all year. Um,
yep,
so and we'll have more to say about Duke in a little bit. All right, next one of the I don't know about stinker exactly, but not the not the closest one that we saw this weekend. Michigan versus Alabama. Um, I feel like we've been saying this all tourney. Very close first half.
yeah,
Alabama was actually up by two against Michigan coming out of the opening 20 minutes, and then Michigan kind of figured things out in the second
yeah,
half. Won that half 43-28 to pull away with the 90-77 win over the four-seeded Alabama, who was looking pretty dangerous coming into that game. But
yeah,
again, as we've seen, especially with these higher seeded teams, close first half, and then they kind of figure it out. Um, kind of figure it out in the back half of the game.
yeah.
So this is another one I didn't get to see a ton of. So let's get
Mhm.
your impressions of it.
Yeah, I think one thing that was very noteworthy to me, much less about the result, but more about something that could come into play later. I think the big question that a lot of people have had was how is someone going to beat Michigan with the length they have? Obviously, a very tall team, and that has proven very difficult for teams to deal with. The first half of that game, Alabama showed a way that could be viable. They were just running all around them.
Right.
It was
Speed.
a physical game, but just very fast. And
Hmm.
particularly Michigan's kind of their big center guy, Mara, he
Mara,
was
yep.
gassed for it. Like it was very evident there in the closing stages, the first half, that he was very tired. It took a while to get to the under eight timeout, and he was just clearly feeling it. And so, they kind of stabilized towards the end of the half, but like it was just very clear that Alabama was playing a very, high pace game, which is how Alabama likes to play. And they were, keeping up with Michigan in the first half, and the result of that was Mara was not really as involved on the offensive end of the glass there, and so that was kind of the reason Alabama was winning at half, and the reason they were I think they were up by seven with actually like a couple minutes left. Michigan kind of
Hmm.
closed it towards the end, but there was obviously a reset at halftime, and the speed was played more to Michigan's kind of pace in the second half, and they were able to kind of make those adjustments. But that's definitely something that I would say if Arizona or any of the other teams remaining have a chance of beating Michigan, they're going to have to find a way to, get in that sort of a contest against Michigan. If you're going to beat Michigan, you're going to have to score a lot more than them and score a lot of points because Michigan is not going to throw up a dud of a game. They're going to score 80 points every game. It's just
Right.
going to be about can you score more, and that's going to be by playing a really fast-paced game and kind of taking away the, spirit and the longevity of their bigs.
Right. Yeah. Michigan has failed to score less than 90 all tournament. 101, 95, 90, and then we'll talk about it a little bit, 95 against
Yep.
Tennessee, but that'll be for our next round. Yeah, I mean, and I kind of said it. I said it last week, just to my untrained eye. Michigan's kind of daggers at they can beat you in multiple ways.
Hmm.
Like you said, their length might not have been a huge factor this game as it usually is. But they're just complete. They're well coached. Lendeborg with 23 points. He had a double double with 12 rebounds as well. He's going to be a really interesting NBA draft guy too, just because of his age.
Hmm.
But that guy's a Swiss Army knife. Can do
Yeah.
just about anything. Went 4 for 5 from beyond the arc. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I'm Michigan versus Arizona is going to be really. We'll talk about that in a little bit, obviously,
Yeah.
but that one's going to be really interesting, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Other than just the one seeds going at it.
Yeah.
All right, moving forward, we got two UConn versus three Michigan State. UConn winning that one 67-63. UConn, kind of the opposite of what we've been saying, actually. UConn winning the first half by 8.
Hmm.
Michigan actually won the second half by 4, 36-32. Just not enough to overcome the
Yeah.
the UConn, the lead UConn had going into halftime, what I'm
Hmm.
trying to say. Again, another one I wasn't able to see a ton of. Yeah, there are a couple of these. I wasn't this. So I'm looking at Friday slate. I was not available Friday.
Hmm.
Um, so again, I'll let you kind of lead us here. What were your thoughts on UConn MSU?
Yeah, very close game, competitive. This is one where I think even though UConn is obviously the two seed, I think there was a lot of questions about them heading into the tournament, especially with
Mm,
how they ended the year.
right.
This is clearly not, the same type of UConn team that's maybe been as dominant as we've seen in recent years. But the one thing that has become very clear is that Danny Hurley can coach. And in case that
Yeah.
wasn't clear already, it's, very apparent now that he's one of, if not the best coaches in college
Yeah,
basketball.
that's one of my main
Um,
talking points for later. But yes,
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, so that was just a great matchup with Tom Izzo and Dan Hurley, who, Tom Izzo has been kind of a mentor in some respects to Dan Hurley. Actually, there was they kind of discussed this, but Tom Izzo was actually someone that Dan Hurley kind of talked about or talked to and kind of asked advice for when he was deciding whether or not to take that job with the Lakers. So Tom
Oh, right.
Izzo,
Yeah.
obviously, really respected in the college basketball circles. He just seemingly manages to take his team to the tournament every year and always playing their best basketball this time of the year. This was a year where it really did seem like, maybe it was possible for them to make a run. They did a good job getting to the Sweet 16. That was a very competitive game where they definitely had a chance down the stretch. It was a pretty close game the whole way. UConn was just a little bit better, and I think played probably their best game of the tournament up to that point. They've what we've seen is they just kept getting better. They played a closer than expected first round game. They, played better than expected against UCLA, who was dealing with some injuries, but they were able to pull away from them in the second half. And then a pretty strong performance against Michigan State, who's always a very well coached team. And so that was a pretty strong win for UConn. And obviously, it didn't show in the first half against Duke, but was, I think one of their better wins of the year for sure.
Yeah. I'm interested to see where Michigan State goes from here because, obviously you can't really understate what Izzo's done there. But at the
Hmm.
same time, it feels like they've hit a wall because this is about where they get every year. Um,
Yeah,
and correct me if I'm wrong, Izzo's not a big proponent of the transfer portal, um, or at least not as
yeah.
much as some of these other
No,
teams.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, not to
Um,
the same extent.
and I have not done enough research, or I don't even know if it's out there why that is. But you kind of gotta wonder. And don't get me twisted. I'm not advocating, it's time to move on from him or anything. I'm
Hmm.
not saying that, but it feels like, all right, this is about where we get every single year. Like you said, maybe they were better positioned to do something this year than before. They still got knocked out in the Sweet 16. What's it going to
Hmm.
take to kind of get back there?
Yeah,
Or not get back, but keep moving forward. Um, so I'm interested to kind of see where they go in that regard. Um, all right, and moving on, the final game I got on Friday. Kind of did this backwards, but whatever. Tennessee, the biggest deficit on Friday.
yeah,
Tennessee over Iowa State. Tennessee, the sixth seed, winning 76-62 over the two seed Iowa State. Again, I wasn't really able to watch much Friday,
hmm
so I didn't see it. Um, Obviously, one of the bigger storylines that
yeah,
Joshua Jefferson did not end up playing. Um, Probably going to be a big what if for the rest of the
yeah,
next
for
couple of
sure.
weeks of what if they
Hmm.
had him
Yeah,
healthy. Um, but yeah, and with Tennessee, I mean, you got to give a lot of credit, and we'll talk about their exit soon, but Barnes and just that program as a whole,
yeah,
they're making the Elite Eight a pretty regular thing. Um,
yeah, yeah.
Obviously the question is going to be how they get past that, but before
Hmm.
we talk about any of that, we'll hit that later. Just what were your thoughts from Tennessee, Iowa State to wrap up Friday's slate?
Yeah, that one I was honestly surprised. I still thought Iowa State was going to be able to win that game even without Jefferson. Obviously, it wasn't a guarantee that he wasn't going to play, but obviously became apparent that he did not in fact play. I I just was a little bit surprised, especially with how dominant Tennessee was. Partially the problem was just Iowa State was just not making enough shots. To be frank, they were having a really hard time scoring, and part of that was with Jefferson being out. I think they did a really good job in the first two games with kind of people stepping up well. The one thing they really struggled with against Tennessee was the three-point shooting, which is usually a big strength of theirs. Mom Chilovich was very good in the first two games of the tournament. And he's someone who, is also an interesting player. I think he averaged 46% from three this year, which led college basketball. And
Right.
he was very poor in that his shooting was
Two,
against Tennessee.
yeah, two
Um,
for
so
seven.
so it was really just for most of that game, they were just kind of, a ways off. And anytime they, were kind of able to make a run to get it, into single digits, Tennessee kind of pulled it back away. And I was really impressed in the second half that they were able to continue kind of the one thing that Iowa State's kind of known for is their defense, and their coach just throws pretty much everything at you. And they were breaking, from man to man back to zone. They were showing everything, and Tennessee was very effective at kind of breaking down any sort of any chances they had. So I was pretty impressed with their pretty resounding victory over Iowa State, who their program is in really great shape and will continue to be for a long time. They have a
Right.
great coach who I don't think will be leaving anytime soon, and they have a very solid identity. So I think long term, the future for them is just really bright. I just think it became apparent that missing Jefferson was just a little bit too much to overcome. And so
Hmm.
even if they would have gotten past Tennessee, had that game gone differently, it was going to be pretty difficult for them to move any further in the tournament.
Right. All right, let's go back to Thursday. I was able to watch a good chunk of these games, so a little more input. Starting off, a absolute barn burner, Purdue versus Texas,
Yep.
2v11. Purdue, hello cat. Purdue wins that one, 79 to 70 off a Trey Kaufman-Wren buzzer beating. Well, not, I don't think it was was it buzzer beating? I don't remember.
It was with a couple
It,
seconds. Yeah,
it
I think it
was
was.
it was
There
close, if
wasn't really
not.
enough time. Yeah.
Right. Buzzer beating, almost buzzer beating, whatever you want to call it. Tip in off the rebound to win the game.
Yeah.
He finished with 20 points, 8 for 10 from the field.
Hmm.
Um, I watched just about all the first half, and then I left for the second half to go to the gym. But watching that first half, which let me pull up, was the score? I forgot when I left. Come on now. ESPN's so weird to navigate. Purdue was up by 4. So still close.
Hmm. Yeah.
I thought Texas had them. Um,
Hmm.
Texas just looked faster. They looked more aggressive, at least to my eyes. Purdue was I didn't doubt that Purdue was the better team, but
Yep.
uh Texas definitely looked faster. They were getting a great game out of Mark. He finished with 29, 11 for 15, 5 for 7 from beyond the arc. Um, but again, when your game is so built on speed and
Yeah.
just, being more athletic, usually that runs out, especially if you're playing a good team who has talent and is well coached like Purdue.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of just difficult. The one thing that really helped Texas was they had obviously the week before they'd obviously played three games in like 5 days.
Mm.
So even though they obviously did a very good job, beating those teams and beating Gonzaga particularly, they were pretty tired towards the end of that Gonzaga game. So it was nice for them to kind of have, 5 days or so off to kind of prepare for that, and they definitely looked refreshed. Yeah, they were playing Purdue, who's a top 10 team in the country. So that was not going to be an easy win. They really did hang with them for pretty much the entire game, just a little bit of a breakdown there on that last defensive stand. But they did a good job to kind of get back in it because it looked like Purdue was sitting okay, and then those last couple minutes, Texas hung right with them, and
Hmm.
did a pretty good job. So, I think it was a pretty good season for Sean Miller there in Texas, his first year there. Obviously, there's a lot of, background with him and kind of his history in basketball, and but there's no doubting he's a great coach, and I think Texas, their program is going to be in a much better place now with him there. For a first year there, that was a really solid win. It seems like there's always someone who goes from the first four and wins a couple games. That happened to be them this year. So I'm
Hmm.
sure, next year there will be more expectations kind of along with their season, and we'll see how that goes. But they did a pretty good job hanging with Purdue, who, seems to be kind of fighting off some of those demons they used to have in the tournament now with some good runs in the last couple years. Obviously, they just haven't been able to quite get over that hump and win a national title. I know their fans are very, very impatient, especially when it comes to Matt Painter, who,
Hmm.
in my opinion, is a good coach, but clearly
Right.
their fans, kind of want to win that national championship and, just kind of waiting for that to happen. But at the end of the day, like, I think it was a pretty solid result for them to get that win. And obviously, we'll talk about their loss to Arizona here in a minute.
Right. All right. Moving on, one of the more anticipated games of the week, which is saying something. Iowa, number 9 versus number 4, Nebraska, battle of the Corn States.
Hmm.
Iowa coming away with a 77-71 win over Nebraska. Bennett Sturts finally kind of woke up a little bit, played all 40 minutes, 20 points, dished out 4 assists as well. I'm really interested in his NBA draft stock as well.
Hmm.
Um, and then Nebraska, I guess we kind of got to start with the blunder. Um,
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
four man on the court, which I unfortunately missed. I saw the first half of this one and
Yeah.
then I left. So basically the same at the same point of Texas Purdue. Um, I don't know if that would have made a difference necessarily if they had all
Yeah.
5 guys on the court. Maybe it would have been closer, but man, I mean, like what else? Well, we'll talk about Iowa after we talk about
Hmm.
their exit, but you know, I think even though you lost to a rival school at that, you got to be pretty damn happy if you're Nebraska with this season.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, not only do you win your first tournament game, you were fairly close to getting to the Elite Eight. Um,
Yeah.
again, probably have the Big Ten Coach of the Year with Fred Hoiberg, 4 man on the
Yeah.
court, blunder aside. Even if who knows if that was his fault or not,
Yeah.
but still.
It
Um,
was, but yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. What are your takeaways from Nebraska,
Yeah.
Iowa?
It was a great game. I think I probably leaned Iowa heading into that game. But like it was basically a coin flip. Like you could have gone either way. They played once on each person's home court this year, so we had seen a little bit of tape on them. It was a pretty good game the whole way. I mean, I think the whole way it kind of looked like Nebraska was kind of the better team and playing better that night. They had a slight edge there really until the end. And I think flat out Hoiberg just kind of got outcoached there at the end. Like that's nothing taken away from the season they had and put together, which, is going to be celebrated as thus far their best every year, getting to the Sweet
Right.
16, winning 2 tournament games. I mean, I think they definitely, can hang their hat on winning one of the top games of the tournament there, that game against Vanderbilt. And, we talked about last week how kind of incredible of an atmosphere that was with their fans and, how they traveled and really supported that team. Obviously, I'm sure they kind of hated to lose that way against, a very well coached Iowa team with Ben McCollum. But, I think overall, you're right. I think they're going to be pretty pleased with the year they had. In some respects, maybe losing some pieces heading into next year. But I think Fred Hoiberg kind of has the program, in a direction that it really hasn't been in a while or maybe ever. And so
Right.
now it's going to be, what can they build from here? Because now they've kind of, made their presence known.
Yep. All right. Moving on. One of the games I did actually watch most of, Illinois Houston.
Hmm.
Number 3, Illinois beating number 2, Houston, 65-55. And Houston looked bad. I
Yeah.
mean, they had stretches where I mean they made it closer at the end because Illinois was up by damn near 20 at some
Yeah.
point. But Houston was stuck on I think it was like 26 points for
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah.
And it was kind of you know one of the I forgot who was broadcasting that game, but he said a very un-Houston like game that they played. At the same time, though, this is exactly you. This is what they usually do, which is,
Yeah. Yeah.
that defense first. You take Illinois, who has an explosive offense, you hold them to 65,
Yeah.
um, and Houston can only muster up 55. I mean, I think that's the more of a testament to Illinois' defense, which,
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
no one was really talking about because again, it's all been their offense and how tall they are, how big they are, but they showed it
Yeah.
against this game too. I mean, rebounding for Houston, I'll pull up the exact numbers now. Uh, so Houston was, I mean, they were only out rebounded 43-34, which isn't
Hmm.
a huge differential, but it felt way more than that, just
Yeah.
impact wise.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, Houston just looked very, even though this is the kind of game they usually try to play and they like to get themselves in, low scoring, kind of slug it out fights, their offense just, they could not get anything going.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very apparent there in the first half, like, whoa, this is, not particularly good offense. It wasn't even, it wasn't that the defense in that first half from either side was so good. Like there was
Right.
just, it was really bad offense there in the first half. Sorry, not Iowa. The Illini really struggled shooting the three, which is something that they have been pretty good at this year. They were not particularly good in the first half. And for a while, it kind of seemed the game like, okay, first one to 55 wins. Like they were, on pace to score very few points there in the first half. I was honestly a little bit surprised. I did have Illinois winning that game and getting to the Final Four, but
Mm,
that was more of like a a gut feeling. I think Houston was kind of the favorite in that game in my eyes, and I just I kept waiting for them to make a run and get back into the game, and it just really didn't come. Like they really struggled. I mean, the one thing that Houston, listen, they're not going to beat a team at the 3-point line. They're kind of more of a jump shot team and, getting good shots. And that just really never came. And in the
mm,
second half, the Illini started hitting a lot of threes, and it never really got back into that game where it was like, okay, this is a close game. Like they were kind of just a decent ways ahead for most of the second half and just kind of a comfortable lead to where they still had to make some shots, but it wasn't too kind of nerve-wracking. So I was honestly a little bit surprised by that game. I thought it was going to be one of the better games of the Sweet 16. So I was a little bit surprised, not necessarily that Illinois won because I did have them in the Final Four, but I just did not expect them to win kind of that, without really any doubt. Like it just was not much of a game there in the second
no,
half.
no, I mean, Houston, I mean, I wish I kept track of how long that scoring drought was in the second half
Yeah.
because there was, I would say at least 5 minutes maybe of just Houston couldn't buy a bucket and Illinois was seemingly scoring on every possession, and that's where they built that about 20-point lead they had at a
Mhm.
point. And Houston did claw back into it. They only lost by 10.
Yeah.
Now some of that might be garbage time too, but they made it look somewhat respectable. But yeah, I mean, I think you gotta give a lot of credit to Brad Underwood too. I mean,
Yeah.
the score is 24-22 Illinois coming out of the first 20 minutes, and then Illinois almost doubles their point total in the second
Yeah.
half. 41-33 was the second half score in Illinois' favor. So yeah, just a weird game and really uncharacteristic out of Houston. I think just in
Yeah.
terms of their kind of sloppiness, lack of execution. Um, at least offensively, defensively, I think they did their job. Besides,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe a couple runs, but at the end of the day, you say, "Hey, we held Illinois to 65." You're going to be happy with that.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Um,
Illinois' length was really apparent in this one
yeah.
too.
Yeah, that's true. I think Kelvin Sampson was kind of just exasperated at a certain point, like, what else can I really do? Like, it's just not happening. They just made a lot of sloppy mistakes. And I think even on the plays where like some of his players were kind of bitching about stuff, like he was like, no, like that was your fault. Like he was. I think just kind of frustrated with the way they played. But that's kind of how some nights are. You obviously wish it doesn't happen in that big of a game in the Sweet 16, but yeah, and that's pretty cool for Brad Underwood, who I wouldn't say he's exactly like a beloved coach, but it is
Right.
pretty cool his story, coming from, a JUCO, and
Hmm.
he's basically just made it up the ranks. He was started off at Stephen F. Austin, a while back, and they made the tournament, Oklahoma State. Obviously now with Illinois, like he's kind of paid his dues and he's slowly moved up the ranks, and so that's pretty cool for him now being in the Final Four.
Right. Well, we'll talk about that one when we get there. And then let's wrap up. Not a ton of time before we take our break, which is fine because this one wasn't particularly close. Number one, Arizona going up against number four, Arkansas, 109-88 win for
Yeah,
Arizona. Um, and I didn't pay too much attention to this one just because by the time we kind of put our attention on it, it was already clearly out of hand.
yeah,
Um, but again, Arizona. If you didn't believe it before, you kind of believed it now that they're the team to beat right now. Um,
hmm
you look at the box score, all five of their starters had 14 plus points, like just
yeah,
total complete effort. It wasn't just, you know, Pete or Burris or whoever, like everyone contributed against an Arkansas team who was, probably one of the hottest teams in the country
yeah.
coming into this after their SEC run. So I don't know how much you have to say about a game like this, other than, we could sing the praises of Arizona later once we talk about their
Yeah.
second game. But, you know, Arkansas, they do deserve credit for the run that they went on dating
hmm
back to the SEC tournament. Just you ran up against, again, probably the best team in college basketball right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it was tough. We kind of, I don't know if you remember kind of earlier in the tournament, but I think it was when Florida was playing whatever 16 team they were playing.
Prairie
The
View.
Yeah, their coach said at halftime, like, we need the Lord's help
Need the
to
Lord help.
win.
Yep.
And that was basically what Coach Kyle said at halftime there. Like, he just said they're really good.
Right.
And their defense, they scored over 40 points in the first half, and they were still losing by like 10 points
Yeah. It
because,
was, it was 54-43 after 20.
yeah, it wasn't their offense that's the problem, and it never is. They have great offensive players led by Acuff, who's obviously a really special talent.
Yep.
But man, Arizona, their offense is just not going to be stopped. Like they are
No.
not going to lose a game because they don't score. And it was just a really impressive all around, attack for them. The only thing I note was, in their game before that against Utah State, they kind of let them creep back in it towards the end in the second half. And so they
Hmm.
came out and played a really solid game from start to finish. And Arkansas was pretty much never in it in the second half. Like it
Yeah.
was pretty. There was really no doubt about the outcome, and so that was good from Arizona's perspective, as opposed to what they did against Utah State. Yeah, I think Coach Cal just kind of knew, like, listen, we ran into a much better team tonight. There wasn't a whole lot, that they could have done differently, other than get Arizona to miss more shots because they scored plenty of points. It's just how do you hold Arizona to fewer points than 90? Like it was not going to be possible that night. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, Arizona 37 for 58 from the field. That's 64% field goal
Yeah.
percentage. And they only went 5 for 8 from beyond the arc. Now, five
Yeah.
for eight, 63, great. You only took
Yeah.
eight three-pointers. Like
Yeah.
that's almost unheard of in in
Yeah.
basketball, period, today. They had only one player, let me see, Del Orso, the bench guy. Um, he was one of two guys. It was him and Burris were the only two guys that take more than 1 3 for Arizona.
Yeah. Yeah.
Burris took four, and then Delorso took two.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's probably the little bit of it I did watch. That's really what jumped out to me was their execution was just
Yeah.
it was
Exactly.
insane, and they were doing it
Yeah.
all. They were. I saw them take at least a couple longer shots. They were getting to the
Yeah.
basket. They were, it was just, picture perfect basketball,
Yeah.
basically.
And it wasn't fast either. They were waiting, they were very comfortable towards the end of the shot clock. It wasn't like they were just playing fast paced. They were running their sets and just playing really solid.
Yeah. So we'll talk about Arizona some more after we discuss the Elite Eight games, which we will do when we are back from our break. So down to 8 teams left in the tournament. We'll talk about those games when we're back here in a couple minutes. And welcome back. Bubba and I have returned from our little break, which was just mere seconds to you guys, but we are ready to
Mhm.
continue our NCAA men's basketball tournament talk with the Elite Eight. 4 more games to go, and kicking off the weekend slate, Iowa versus Illinois, 9v3. Illinois taking care of business though, 71 to 59. Um, and obviously, I think one of the stories that I wasn't able to, I was working all day Saturday, but one of the stories was Sajakovic, um,
Mhm.
Illinois, first name Andre, son of Peja, former NBA
Yeah.
guy. Had a good game, 17 points, 7 for 9, also threw in 5 boards. But yeah, I mean, I guess my question to you, Bubba, is was this just kind of a case of the Iowa Magic, as good as they've been, still a 9 seed? Was this a
Mhm.
case of it maybe just kind of running out against a not only a good Illinois team, but a good Illinois team who has seen
Yeah.
Iowa before this year too, being in the Big Ten?
Yeah. I think, beating a team like Nebraska was doable, but, I just think beating Illinois was going to be a really tall task. Especially after getting through Houston. Like, I think, I'm sure they didn't view it this way, but that was kind of the biggest test for them was getting through Houston. Like,
Hmm.
beating Iowa was not as difficult. Like they were pretty comfortably. I mean, it was a close game for most of it. Illinois kind of pulled away at the end, but they were kind of ahead, by at least a few possessions for most of the game, most of the second half. So that was just kind of, a tough go of it. Like I think still. Really impressive first year for them under head coach Ben McCollum. What was interesting is I saw some people saying, that here look at they achieved all the success in his first year, and it was basically matched the success they had had under previous coach Fran McCaffrey, who is pretty well respected himself, but they just were never able to win more than a game or two in the tournament. So I think a really, strong opening year for, their new coach, and clearly is going to be a little bit of a rebuilding year. We'll see what they're able to do in the portal, and as far as kind of who they got coming in next year is kind of concern. But a really, I'd say strong opening year for them, and one of the stories of the tournament for sure. What they achieved, beating Florida. But yeah, I don't think it was a huge surprise how the game went, and Illinois definitely deserved their place in the Final Four, and they're not going to be an easy out, no matter it's not going to be easy for any of those three teams to beat them.
No, and before I say my spiel on Iowa, I'll get the Illinois stuff out of the way for this game, and then we'll come back to them when we talk about the Final Four. But again, at least it is kind of a similar game almost to what they did against Houston
Mhm.
in terms of the offense wasn't really moving much in that first half. They were down
Mhm.
32-28 actually. Um, Found that next gear in the second half. They won that 43-27. And again, kind of the where did this come from factor with Illinois, which was the defense. I mean, not that Iowa
Yeah.
is an offensive powerhouse. They were one of the slower
Yeah.
teams, but still, you
Hmm.
kept them under 60. They really limited the damage from everyone besides Sturts.
Yeah.
Sturts 24, 8 for 17 from the field, as well as 4 3-pointers. Besides that, the only other player um, hit double digits was Tate Sage off the bench. He had 10.
Yeah.
So um, I'm really interested, especially with UConn coming up. Just what's this? Is this Illinois defense going to keep this up? I mean, we've seen what
Yeah.
UConn can do. We're going to talk about what UConn can do with Dan Hurley. You're going to be hard pressed to find a better coach than Dan Hurley. As good as the last 4 coaches remaining are. But that's
Hmm.
more about UConn. As for my piece on Iowa, I mean, yeah, I was pretty big on Iowa coming into the tourney. I kind of am kicking myself for picking Florida to beat them because like my heart really wanted to pick Iowa that game. I just didn't think they were going to be able to do it. Um, Prove me wrong. Um, I had Nebraska beating Florida in the next round, actually. But yeah, I mean, obviously, as we both kind of said, big Ben McCollum fan. Not only because obviously he's a former Valley guy, but also, I mean, the guy. I don't know if I saw this. I don't know if it was to him or I think it was to him. Um, kind of giving him the Signetti treatment of the
Yeah.
guys just
Hmm.
won. I mean, dominated
He just
D2,
wins. Yeah.
that dominated D2 for years, took his best player from D2 to Drake. I don't know about dominated, but won the Valley and then beat an SEC school in the first round with Drake, and then took that same kid plus some other guys over to Iowa, just across the
Hmm.
state, or not even across the state, very close to Drake and Iowa are pretty damn close to each other. And look what he did in his first year there in the Big Ten. Um,
Hmm.
I'm really, but like you said, I'm really interested to see where he goes now without Sturts. I mean, dating back to his D2 days, that was, it was Sturts in the column. So, and Sturts
Yeah.
has probably worked himself into the lottery discussions actually of the NBA draft. Um, so, like you said, going to be a really interesting year for McCollum. I haven't heard any rumors about this. I'm just saying, I hope he stays in Iowa. I mean, he's already in the Big Ten. It's kind of hard to move up too much, unless one of those premier jobs. I mean, I saw those fucking UNC fans, just throwing every name
Yeah.
under the sun out, and they're like, "Oh, what
Yeah.
about Ben McCollum?" Like, he's not leaving
Yeah.
Utah. Like, I mean, he's not leaving Iowa. Pardon me. He's from that
Yeah.
area. Like, it's his first year. Like, look what he's done. Yeah,
Yeah.
really, really. I was gonna say proud, but I don't think my opinion matters much to him. Really impressed. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Really impressed. I'm proud of you, Ben. No, really impressed with what McCollum has done just his whole
Yeah.
journey. And like you said, I'm intrigued what happens now as he kind of has to move off of the guy that has been his guy since, Northwest
Yeah.
Missouri.
Yeah.
So
I think it'll be difficult for him to win a national championship there, which is why I wouldn't be shocked if he does get a chance somewhere else in a couple of years, but I don't think he's really looking for that move, and I
no.
don't think it would be unless it was like a really, premier opening sort of thing.
No, I mean, it would have to be. I don't think it's anytime soon, and it'd have to be one of those top tier programs,
Yeah.
who have the resources to help him get there. Or, like I
Yeah.
said, maybe he continues the Signetti treatment or Signetti
Yeah.
comparisons, and maybe he does get Iowa there. I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, Iowa's obviously they got money. They're a big school, big state school, and
Yeah.
you have a coach like that in place, he could do some wonders in the
Yeah.
transfer portal. So,
Yeah.
all right. And then the second game Saturday, I really didn't hear a lick about this game other than the final score. I'm going to be honest. Arizona taking down Purdue 79-64. Um, Again, I kind of did my Arizona piece after the Arkansas game. They're just so complete, man. I mean, Purdue was no pushover. Um, and looking at the box score, Purdue was even up in the first half too. I mean, they're up by
They were
7,
for most
and
of
then
the, yeah, they
and
were up
then
by quite a bit at halftime.
and then Arizona comes out and beats them by over 20 points in the second half. It's like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? I mean, good Lord. So I don't know. I'm assuming you did watch it. So what do you got to say about this one?
Yeah, that was a tough one. I was obviously rooting for Arizona because that's who I have winning. But yeah, that first half was like, okay, like we kind of have a game here. I wasn't really buying that they were going to lose, but it was definitely, they had to have been a little bit uncomfortable there. I think that you mentioned they were down by 7 at halftime. Like, it that was really the first time this whole tournament that's been like, okay, like, this is
Mhm.
kind of a little bit of a danger zone,
Yeah,
but
true.
they were already in the lead by the under 15 timeout or under 16 timeout, and
Under
they
16,
didn't
yeah.
really look back after that. Like once they took the lead, it was never really a close game after that. Like it just didn't seem like Purdue kind of had the gas to kind of get back in it. not shocking result. Like Arizona was clearly the better team of those two heading into the night. Credit to Purdue for playing a good first half. Like obviously, if they could have somehow won that game, it maybe would have changed the narrative around them just a little bit. But listen,
Hmm.
I think they do need to kind of remember who they are. Like they're not that blue blood team that you expect to win the championship every year. Like it was a
Hmm.
pretty solid year for them, making the Elite Eight, something they've now, done several times in a row. And so
Hmm.
maybe, they're kind of continuing to build up the program to something to where maybe in the next couple of years they do finally get that championship. It just wasn't going to be this year. They were not the better team than Arizona. And even if they did by some miracle win, they sure as hell weren't going to beat Michigan. So they just kind of were going to have a really tough battle there. But yeah, credit to Arizona, who, as we look forward to now, I think they're definitely probably the co-favorites along with Michigan. I still kind of tend to give a little bit of more credence to Arizona. They're still my pick to
Yeah.
win. But man, that's going to be a really fun matchup against Michigan.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, I think Purdue's so interesting because it's kind of what we said about Michigan State, and it's kind of what I have to say to a much higher extent about the losing team we'll talk about next.
Hmm.
Um, a certain Rocky Top team. Um, it's like where, okay, like what, like you said, where do they go now? I mean, it feels like they obviously with the transfer portal, you never know. It feels like they kind of peaked with Edie. I mean, you had the best player in the nation and, maybe the most, at least maybe the most dominant player in the nation just because of the guy's size. One seeds, obviously you had that embarrassing loss, but then you got to a national championship. Um,
Yeah,
it's like, can they get back that? I'm interested to see, like you said, the discourse around Painter, who I think is also a good coach, former Saluki as well, so shout out. Um, it's like where I don't know. They're just always. It's like okay, how much, you have to ask this about every elite team in any sport. It's like, all right, how much of being elite but not the very best can you take before something shifts?
yeah.
Always getting to
I,
the
I
Elite
I think they're
Eight.
going to be fine.
No, I think they'll be fine too, but I think it's a question you got to ask at some point of, all right, look, this
Yeah.
is I don't know how many years now of, being an Elite Eight, being a top 10
Hmm.
team in the nation. And like you said, like they won it, obviously. I mean, they've been so close, it
Yeah.
seems, that they just can't, they're not that kind of feel good team who's just kind of happy to be there. Like they have championship
Yeah.
aspirations, and every year it's, becoming the trend that they bow out, kind of right before the finish line. So I don't know. I'm interested,
Yeah.
very interested. And
Hmm.
is Smith's done, right? Braden Smith?
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe so.
I think he's got. I mean, if he broke the all-time record, you figured he's got to be in the last
No,
year.
yeah. I think he is, yeah.
Because I
But
haven't
I
heard
mean,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's listed as a senior, so assuming he doesn't. Let me see, what year? I mean, this is his fourth year, so assuming he doesn't have
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
sneaky year of eligibility remaining,
Yeah.
which who knows these days. Um,
I think we've kind of got past those COVID years, so to
We
speak,
got
so
past
we should be
we
good.
got past the COVID year. Our class was the first one to not get one,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
But there's always now he did play over 30 games in
Yeah.
all those seasons, but I don't know. You talk to the right
Yeah.
people. I've heard of some stupid shit happening with eligibility.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's keep it moving. Let's kind of breeze through this one because I know the one we want to talk about is next. Michigan. Not even slowing down against Tennessee. I mean,
Yeah.
did they even look at them? Like, I don't know. 95-62 win for Michigan, won by 22 points in the first half, and then won by 11 points in the second half. Like,
Yeah.
I think this is what Michigan kind of, as odd as it is to say, because they were a one seed and they had some pretty convincing wins before. To me, this is kind of what they needed going into that Arizona matchup of like,
Yeah.
here's the game where we look like the best team in basketball. Because for most of
Yeah.
the tournament that was Arizona, and now Michigan can say, look, we just beat the 6 seed Tennessee, who's turning into a premier basketball franchise or program. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
we just beat them by 33. So come at us. Yeah, I again I didn't watch this one either. I was also working all day, just about all day Sunday. Anything you really want to hit on other than just the ass whooping?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to say about the game. Obviously, less of a stressful first half there for Michigan, who was pretty much in control the whole game. The
Hmm.
only thing I'd say is like I Rick Barnes has built a really strong program, as you mentioned there, and now, several Elite Eights in a row. Like he's done a really good job there, and I don't think that's going to stop for a couple years. I don't know how many years he has left. I would really, for their program, I really think it'd be cool to see them get to a Final Four at least. I think he deserves
Right.
that with what he's done. And, just as a testament to what they've built there now, like it looks like his associate head coach is probably going to get the NC State job, Gainey, who played there. So like he's built a really strong program there, and I think it's probably going to be a few more solid years as long as Rick Barnes is there. So interested to kind of see how that's going to go in the next couple years. But as I said, like to see him get into the Final Four. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, oh, Cincinnati. Okay, before I get into it, I got really confused because you said his associate was going to NC State. I was told
Mhm.
yesterday that Utah State's coach was going to NC State, but whoever told me that just flat out lied because he's going to Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's
Because
it's not done yet. But yeah, he played for NC State, and so that's who
right,
kind of all the fans want to see
and
there.
because
After Will Wade,
NC
that snake left for LSU.
he went to back, man, LSU. People love their coaches.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
eh, Obviously the Utah State one we're looking at because they were able to get UNI's coach who had been with UNI
yeah.
forever,
Hmm.
Ben Jacobson. I
And
mean,
yeah, good coach.
yeah, hell of a coach. The guy was at UNI, so that was a kind of shock to wake up to seeing him leave. So, anyways, I don't know how we got on that. Yeah, I mean, Tennessee. I kind of hinted at when I was talking about Purdue, but way to less of a set than Purdue. Like it's like you said, it's like, okay, what's it going to take now to get that step? Like you said, they've got some Elite Eights in a row. Barnes has turned that into a super respectable, like really great program. Um, Now it's kind of like, all right, again, not nearly as much pressure as Purdue, but it's like, all right, let's start seeing those next steps. Like, and I know I'm making it sound like getting to the Elite Four is, as easy as that, which obviously it's not. But yeah, I mean that they're always there at the Elite Eight. And like you said, it'd be pretty fun to see them finally kind of break through that barrier. So, all right, let's talk about the doozy. Um, UConn Duke 2v1. My heart shattering because I had Duke winning all of my fucking brackets. Um, UConn winning 73-72. Before we get to that, and you know what I'm talking about,
Mhm.
anything else you want to say about the rest of the game, the first 95% of it?
Yeah,
Duke looked
I
really good
mean,
in the
it
first half,
was it
man.
was
Duke
yeah.
looked
I
great for
mean,
20 minutes.
yeah. And I wasn't really that surprised because I really thought Duke was going to kind of comfortably win that game. I've not been sold on UConn all year, and so I wasn't really surprised when Duke got off to that big lead. And I was kind of texting in some of my group chats like, okay, well, we kind of got a stinker of a game there. Like, hopefully, kind of the next round's a little bit better. And it
What
didn't look
rings
like it was
off.
going to be a game there at halftime, and then in the second half, like UConn made some really strong adjustments led by Coach Hurley. Like, especially their pressure was just hounding Duke, made a lot of turnovers, a lot of mistakes. They started becoming a much closer game there. Still down the stretch, looked like Duke was going to be able to hold them off. They kind of steadied the ship, made some kind of good, tough two-pointers down the stretch there. And then, man, I mean, that really sucks. And the one thing I will just say is, it's pretty like, it's pretty, in to kind of hate on Duke. I don't really hate on Duke as much anymore. Like it was a thing when Coach K was there, but now it's like, I don't really hate Duke. I actually like their coach, John Shire. I kind of feel bad for
Yeah.
him because now he kind of has a reputation now for a couple major choke jobs that he's had.
Right.
And just not being able to win a national championship with some of the rosters that he's
Right.
had and kind of some of
The
the really
talent.
strong teams he's had. So I
And
do kind of feel bad for him because it seems like a lot of people are kind of, basking in kind of his, failures, so to speak. So I do kind of feel bad, but man, that was just such a crazy ending. And honestly, I would
yeah.
say one of the top, tournament games of probably the century, or at least the last decade.
Yeah. I mean, before we get to the ending, I watched basically all the first half, and then made the stupid decision. I laid down in my bed. I ended up missing the second half. Um, which yeah, I can't believe I see it.
Mhm.
I know. And and it's not even that I thought the game was over, because even when they went into halftime and the score was 44-29, I didn't think UConn was out of it. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, we know what Hurley is capable of with whatever roster you give him. Um, and then, yeah, all of a sudden, that fucking ending. I mean, the Boozers were having a good game. Cam had 27, eight
Yeah.
rebounds. Caden had 15 and five rebounds. Those guys were lighting up in the first half. Um,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, and even despite the comeback by UConn, I how do you fuck up that last play? Like just let's
Yeah.
just get into it. I mean, you inbound it, you get rid of it. I'm thinking the only thing is maybe, they were scared about the 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 10-second violation and getting over half court, because I think when they
Yeah.
inbounded it,
I
when they inbounded it, I think there was a little over 10 seconds. So um it was like 10.9. I think it was something really ridiculous.
Mhm.
So, even if you held the ball and UConn didn't foul, you would leave about a second or so on the clock, which I guess I don't know. I'm trying to make sense of something. I don't fucking know what happened. Like,
Yeah.
what are you
Yeah.
doing? I mean,
I mean,
hold on to the ball. Just football, hold it and just wait for a foul. Like I said, worst case
yeah.
scenario, they run the clock out. And if it's, getting to just about 10 seconds, then you just heave it. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
mean,
It,
what the hell?
Yeah, it was just tough because they did the hard part by getting the ball in bounds, which is something that they had struggled a little bit with there in the second half,
Right,
and just kind of with that pressure that UConn was throwing at him. But
right.
yeah, they did that part, and then he had a couple guys open, but it's just moving so fast, and so it's like those split-second decisions. It was really tough. Like he obviously had those two guys open. If he would have just thrown the ball up in the air a little bit more, so I kind of see, what he was trying to do, but man, that was just really tough. And honestly, like as soon as UConn got the ball, like, I didn't really I was kind of just rooting for a good finish. So I didn't care either way, but I was like, man, I just have a feeling they're gonna make that shot. And I have to say that the move for I'm blanking Caravan to pass up
Sure.
and pass it to a freshman who had
Yeah.
really struggled shooting in the tournament. Has kind of started to figure it out, but to have the trust to give it to him basically from the logo there, and man, I mean that was it had to be brutal for Duke. Like I feel bad for for their guys because it seemed like Cam kind of took it pretty hard.
Yeah.
And I don't think that play should kind of, trump all of the other, pretty awesome things he's done this season and in the tournament. But man, that was just pretty brutal.
And which one was it that had the turnover? Was it Cam? I thought it was Caden.
Yeah, it might have been Caden. Sorry.
I thought it was Caden. But I mean, either way, yes, what you said about Cam is true. I
Yeah.
mean, both of them are, and especially Cam,
Yeah.
considering
Both
he
of them.
might be the first overall pick, maybe.
Yeah.
I think it'll be one of the two other guys, but and also,
Yeah.
yeah, the balls on Mullins to just shoot,
Yeah.
because I think they had a timeout left. I think,
Well, yeah,
maybe.
and there was still several seconds left too. I mean, by the
And the
time, but for him to pass the ball there, I mean, that was a senior, one of their
yeah,
best players, one of
Carabao,
their leaders, and to be like, okay, like the clock is ticking here, like I'm gonna pass it to a guy who's not even any closer to the hoop than I am, and
right.
I'm gonna pass it back. Like if there was no guarantee, if he was well covered that he was even gonna get a shot off. Like when you're losing with under 5 seconds to go, usually the play is not to pass the ball; it's to get a shot up.
Well, and
So that was just pretty crazy.
usually the plays also call a damn timeout and like set something up, but no, the balls would just say, fuck it, we ball and heave it for his first and Mullins' first and only 3-point make of the night. I mean, good Lord. And then yeah, the Dan Hurley antics
Hmm.
afterwards were amazing, obviously, staring
Yeah.
down the ref. Um Guy, I saw something, I don't know if it's Twitter or Instagram, but they're like, oh, this was such a stupid move by Hurley to, he stared down the ref. I'm like, yeah, but like, what do you expect out of him? I mean, and someone
Hmm.
said, oh, that
Yeah.
ref should have had some balls and teed him up. I'm like, no, just
Yeah.
no, like,
Yeah.
let it happen. Hurley didn't punch him, like, and then did you see the
Yeah.
clip of Hurley in the locker room missing his pants?
No, I didn't see that.
There's a photo of him. He's like giving his post game locker room speech or whatever. He has a towel on, like jacket
Wow.
and jacket and dress shirt are still on. His pants are off. It's a towel. I'm like, what
Hmm.
the hell happened? So,
Yeah.
I
What
mean,
happened there?
he was almost derobed after the game. His jacket was
Yeah.
basically off. So I mean, geez, and yeah, just what a and what a coach too, which I'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
But
Did you
so,
happen to see the video of the I think it was a Duke announcer. I don't know if it was a student announcer or just the
I
the radio guy who was complaining about like a player going onto the court and
oh
be
yeah
like,
yeah yeah.
"Oh my
I
God,
didn't.
that's sickle!" Like,
I didn't see the clip, but I saw the
yeah,
headline or like the Instagram cover of
yeah,
it where he was saying, they should get teed up for getting on because they had a couple players on the floor and that's usually a
yeah,
tap. It's like again, same thing I said about the Hurley looking at the ref thing. It's like
yeah,
that's not a call you make unless it's super
yeah. In,
egregious.
in that moment,
Unless it's
yeah,
super egregious, you don't make that call because that ref would be shot dead if you ever
yeah,
entered the state of Connecticut.
yeah,
So it's like,
yeah,
look,
exactly.
unless it's super egregious, which neither of them were. I mean, the guy got on the court
No,
a little
yeah,
bit,
yeah.
and Hurley didn't even say anything. You just looked at him.
No, no, no.
Um,
Yeah, he just kind of like, yeah. I
yeah,
just kind of thought it was funny that basically right away that Duke meme of from the White Lotus with the guy
oh,
with his gun to his
yeah,
head that was
I think it
just
was
retweeted so many times.
something or Jason Isaacs. I forgot what his
Hmm.
something. It's Isaac or Isaacs. Draco Malfoy's dad from Harry Potter. Yeah, he's got the Duke shirt on and the gun to his head. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
Jesus. I mean, you might have back-to-back first overall picks between Cooper Flag and now maybe Cam. And yeah, you don't even get to the title game. So
Hmm.
yeah, man. But Duke will be. I'm not even really gonna talk about Duke's future because they'll be fine. I mean, they have a good coach.
Yeah.
They're gonna get just about whoever they want in the portal. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, all right. Well, let's look to the future of this weekend as we're just about out of time. So perfect. Two games on Saturday, and then obviously the final showdown on Monday night. We got Illinois versus UConn, 3-2, and then Michigan versus Arizona, 1v1. Um, Obviously that Michigan Arizona game is going to be. I think I don't know if it was Chuck or it was either Chuck Kenny or Bruce Pearl who was on the panel where they said, "Look, yeah, I know what a lineup." Um,
Hmm.
they're like, "Look, it definitely wasn't Nate Burleson because that guy does not know basketball whatsoever." Um,
Poor guy.
it's like, look, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Chuck because Chuck's been on the Arizona train. Um,
Hmm.
he said, "Look, even if this game was on December, 5th, like it would be must-watch TV then, and now it's
Yeah.
the national semifinal." Um, that's just gonna be, and I don't know if Michigan barely beat Tennessee or kind of did what they'd always done this tournament, which was maybe a little worrisome, and then just pull away against Tennessee, I would confidently say Arizona. But I don't know. After that Tennessee game, Michigan's looking solid, to say the least. I don't know what to expect out of
Yeah.
that one. I mean, and
Yeah.
on
Well,
to me on paper, those are just from a somewhat casual viewer's perspective, kind of similar teams in terms of they don't have a Cam Boozer,
yeah.
they don't have a Cuff, they don't have a Bennett Sturts or whoever else. Like they're just
Mhm.
all around
Yeah.
great teams.
Really solid,
I
good
think
teams.
and I
Yeah.
think Chuck said there's probably 9 to 10 future NBA guys, even if they're not going to be a top 10 pick, like
Yeah.
just 9 to 10
Yeah.
guys who are going to find their way into the league on that court. Um,
Yeah.
I picked Michigan in my brackets, or at least two of them. I might have picked Arizona in one. Um, I think Arizona will come away with this. That's kind of where I'm leaning. I don't know what you got.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna stick with them because that's who I had winning. So I kind of feel compelled. Yeah, I think it's really a pick 'em. Like, you said you don't know what to expect. The only thing I know what to expect is going to be points and a lot of them,
Yeah.
because that's what these two teams do is score a lot of points. You know, I wouldn't be shocked if the over is like I haven't looked at what it's at, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's at like 180 basically or
Uh,
170 because I
on
mean man
on ESPN, you got 157.5 for the total.
well that's disgraceful. That's I'm taking the over if that's the case.
Yeah,
um,
that's
but
less than
yeah,
8 points a team. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, that one that's gonna be an absolute slobber knocker, 7:59. So, and then the other one, the first game on Saturday, the first semi, Illinois UConn. I think I gotta go UConn. I mean,
mm,
I want to say Illinois. I think Illinois has been the better team,
yeah.
but
It's tough to say. Yeah,
as we learned, I just you can't count out Hurley and what he can do. I mean,
yeah,
as good as Brad Underwood's been, obviously, I'm still taking Danny Hurley over him. And is Illinois, and we're also getting to a point now where it's like, all right, UConn's been here 3 of the last 4 years. They won the other
yeah.
2 times to get to the championship and win the championship. Illinois, this is their first time since a while, to put it
Yeah.
simply.
First time
So
since the Final Four was in St. Louis.
yeah,
I think it was
um,
2004.
something. Yeah, that sounds about right. I heard the dates the other day, and I just don't remember them off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Um, I want to, like, if they had totally neutral coaches, like carbon copy coaches,
Yeah.
I would probably go Illinois. I just like them more as a team, but I think the Hurley factor's making me lean Huskies.
Yeah, I think it's fairly evenly matched. I mean, I have no doubt that UConn can win. But I don't know. If Illinois has a decent shooting night, I think they're going to win. They should have a decent size advantage there, rebounding. Obviously, UConn, like the question for them is, can they make enough shots to win that game? Because that's been what's held them back this year is their shooting. So
Mhm.
it's really going to kind of come if they're able to shoot on a level that's at least somewhat comparable to Illinois, like they're going to win. But if Illinois has a pretty decent shooting night, then I think I give the advantage to them. I say that, of course, and have made a living off of betting against UConn this tournament, and by a living, I mean, lost every time.
Right.
So it's hard to say. Like, I think it's really a coin flip. Like, I personally, just because I've seen what they've been able to do this year, I think Illinois is the slight favorite in my view. I don't know how UConn is going to come out and play after that obviously very emotional and kind of draining performance against Duke, but hopefully they've had enough time to kind of reset. I would expect it to be a good game either way.
Yeah, and I will say I feel semi-confident. Again, the only thing holding me back is Dan Hurley gonna Dan Hurley. I feel fairly confident in saying the tournament winner is going to come out of Michigan, Arizona. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm slightly leaning Arizona now. I wanted I did in our office bracket. It's coming down to this game between me and one other guy. I had Michigan. He has Arizona. So I do want Michigan to win in that respect. I don't know. Arizona, they haven't really had any scares, and that's always a good thing. So, and plus the Big Ten has not had great luck winning the championship since in the last quarter century, in this century, I should say, since Michigan State won in
Yeah.
2000. So, um, but hey, they got two chances this year. So, um,
Yep.
two out, to half the final four. So, well, we'll see what happens. And then when Bubba and I are back, well, we'll probably end up recording Tuesday of next week. Just so we can watch the final. We'll discuss what went down Saturday and then on Monday. Um, and then if we need some time filler, obviously baseball is going to be more than a week underway by that point. So we can maybe throw that in, and if not, we'll definitely hit it the week after. So, um, Bubba, any closing thoughts?
None that stand out.
And I have to ask it. You know what's
Hmm.
coming.
Oh
Did
yeah,
you did
I
you
do know
watch the
what's
Grand
coming.
did you watch the Grand Prix this weekend?
No, but I did. I saw who won, but it wasn't someone that I even remembered. I remembered us talking about him, but I didn't recognize his name. I
Kimi
think I
Antonelli.
saw something about Charles Leclerc, got somewhere in the top three, but I don't think he won.
He got P3
Yeah, I sent you that one F1 tweet that I saw early in the week about what's his name, Verstappen, kind
Verstappen.
of I don't want to say
Yeah,
snapping at a reporter, but kind of getting mad. And then I saw another thing a couple days ago that he was maybe thinking about retirement.
yeah, he's
I'm not happy because you sent me that tweet and now I've had a couple pop up on my For You
there we
page
go.
and I don't really give a
Beautiful.
shit. But
We're getting you there.
I just feel like it's just taking away from other stuff. But yes, I did see, but I wouldn't be able to tell you who won the race in Japan this weekend.
Well, you got the country. Kimi Antonelli won again, two straight for the 19-year-old, which is insane. And then yes, Max has thrown out the threat of retirement, which would make me curl up and cry for a while because I love watching him race. Um, he's not going to. He's just doing it so the FIA takes notice of him because they don't want him to retire either. So, or he might because he's fucking psycho like that. But anyways, um, all right. So we will have some more basketball to talk about on Tuesday. This episode will come out this Friday, and the championship weekend review slash maybe some baseball will come out next Friday. Um, Bubba, enjoyable time as always. Go Gorlocks. Whatever else we usually say. So lock it up, baby.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, everyone, and we will see everyone next week.